a way to increase the profits. Selling land? That could be easy. So in 1919, on what we know as the ball field in the back area to go up past the schools to go to Vernon's, that was all the Plum Cove pasture. When the Rockport Granite Company in 1890 buys the Cape Ann Granite Company out, they get all that land. And by 1919, they are laying out bungalow lots. Bungalow lots are like what happened down on Sunset Point, right? Down in there, the houses that have been torn, the ones left as McMansions, the little quick slab ups. So imagine going down to Plum Cove Beach and turning around and seeing houses. It never happened. This is the area we're talking about. Here's Plum Cove Beach. We're talking about this whole area. This is the area, and where it backs up into the area of the Day Dairy Farm. And in 1920, Rockport Granite Company agrees to allow Eugene Day to move his cows from down across the Plum Cove pasture to his fields. And that they're going to maintain, says, we reserve the right to allow the grove to be used for picnics, for which there will be no charge, since we reserve the right to allow the boys and young men to play ball in the lower fields. But understand, if we want to sell it, we're going to. So it's only in the past week that I come to this conclusion. The biggest realtor group on Cape Ann is Rockport Granite Company. Now, why didn't it happen? Because they had nothing to do with the heart of Cape Ann. They're in Boston. They're at a distance. It's not like they got feet on the ground. Typically, they would say at a board of directors meeting, we authorize the treasurer to sell this plot of land for $4,500, not a penny less. And land was being sold. Tenement houses were being torn down. They were selling houses all the way through Pigeon Cove. I came across a document recently where they're saying, we own 3 lots in Pigeon Cove, kind of close to each other. Great ocean view. Take a look at what the land costs in Manchester and Magnolia, and you will realize that this is one of the best lots available. It's a Granite Company business. Fortunate that they weren't here, that they were so arrogant that they did all of their meetings in Boston, that they weren't boots on the ground to make it happen faster. By 1925, 1926, when they run into difficulties with the majority stockholder becoming this unknown entity from New York, they couldn't do it. They could say, we want to sell this piece of land, but we don't have the stockholders in agreement on this. And all of it gets frozen. So in a reverse way, we can thank them perhaps for the fact that we've got the ball field and the field the way that it is. Okay. Last bit. So, okay, a bunch of people, many Finns learned English in 1902. Where's the evidence? Shown. So in Barbara Urkela's papers, sometime when she's working on Hammers and Stone, at some point she puts out a great call to Finns across the United States who might have lived in Lanesville to please come forward and give their memoirs or their memoirs. This is Ida. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, who comes at the age of 4 in 1890 to live in Lanesville. And so her handwriting, I'm going to pretend that she was one of those pupils in that school at that time. So now it's 65 years later, and she said, my parents with 4 small children were living in a tiny house in the same yard with the company store by Butler Quarry. The house was built like this: 2 rooms, one above the other, and a lean-to kitchen. I need to get a piece of paper and read the rest of this to you, because it's a good story. And I remember the name. So this is the house that was built. There was no room for a stairway. So the lower room had a hole in the ceiling and a ladder. My parents slept in the upper room. We children slept on the cotton and straw pallets along the walls of the lower room. The only furniture in the room was a large homemade table and 2 long benches and some chairs. All the bedding was stored in the upper room during the day. The yard had an old orchard of gnarled apple trees and a chicken sales utility building. No fence, plenty of wood, wildwood in the rear. The house was near the road. My father was one of the lucky men working some kind of depression was on. No work for anyone. Thanks to Dr. Rowley, is in Rowley schools, and a Charles Andrews, my father had a job, even if he did not see 1 cent of money for a year. He was a watchman for the quarry in the store, done any odd jobs around the place. So he earned the food, warmth, and shelter for his family for a year. As little as the house was, he found room in it for a homeless 17-year-old Finnish boy who was wandering around Lanesville because no one wanted him. So he had his straw and cotton pallet in a welcome corner with us. One day, the street suddenly in front of the house was full of people. All the American town people were running up and down the street, yelling and laughing hysterically, and they were throwing paper money up in the air. My mother stood in her doorway, amazed. Finally, she said, I gotta skip the finish. In English, she said, "Dear God, have all the Americans gone crazy? Throwing money around like that?" Mother sent us children out into the street to pick up every little piece of paper that we could. And she papered the lower front room in the little house with it. Years later, I went back and asked the people if I might see it. And yeah, it was still on the wall. My explanation? The Americans had found out that the script of Civil War money that they had been saving was worthless. And then Ida does one more amazing thing. This is probably my favorite map and favorite graphic of Cape Ann. So if I were to ask you to close your eyes and draw a kind of outline of Cape Ann. Right? Ida, this Finn who's learned English, this is her outline. Gloucester down here with a waiting station. West Gloucester, Wolf Hill, Riverdale, Ennisquan, Bayview, Lanesville. So this is the near and dear spot where all of my family lives. So she has many, many, many anecdotes. Talks about the quality of the things. Talks about the socialist things. And then there's this little... Peter Parsons, did you make it? You did. Good. Whale straw. With the same Dogtown Common. And she says, I spent my whole childhood leading my father's cows here, picking blueberries and cranberries. I used to sell to summer people for 2 cents a quart. I used to sit on whale straw and look all around, but I was so used to natural beauty that I did not see it. Since then, I have seen many, many beautiful places in America and Mexico. Now I remember how beautiful the view is from Dogtown Crossing. So, I talked about the birch tree at the beginning with the brown part to be cut out and boiled down. And the essence of all of this is the Finns learning English, the way in which they moved around. It's this very essence of the heart and the center of Cape Ann. And this is really, seeing whales draw on a cup of coffee is a good thing. I'm going to stop here just a minute. I am in June. I want to tell you about Dogtown for a minute. In June, I'm giving a talk for the San Diego Historical Society on relics from Dogtown sites. One of the things in connecting back in this way, and I wanted to go back to a period before your grandparents, where it was the impact of great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents of making these key choices that ripple through time, that still have an effect today, as I say, through Folly Cove, through Art and Lanesville, through the wonderful is it's very easy to say, oh, they did things differently at that time. But the stories from relics is to really bring us back into what lessons there are. And I'm going to end on this slide. This is before Martin Harsley picked up a paintbrush. Okay? It's wide open, and you can see there's a fin, one fin in costume. Another boy I can't determine, and they have got, as protection, they're digging out cattle bones from a cellar hole. The difference in Dogtown is the difference in a very vast open space, where when the people went there, they all wore, the men typically wore suits and coats and ties, and the women wore long dresses. And we could see them from a distance all the way over to Elmwood Street, and know what the culture was, know what the background was, and know whether they were a friend or someone you wanted to walk away from. That's an important element to bring into the present in a way that can inform us for other decisions going forward into the future. So that's what I want to end with today. You're bothered by the fins in a good way. I want you to go to the ballroom to really reflect on that incredible act of courage that they did, and reflect on the center part of Cape Ann, which became a great area of solace and protection at a moment when the police were there to grab them. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, by the way, the police round up 25 out of 50 and the judge dismisses everything, so it didn't really go anywhere. I guess briefly, is there any thoughts or questions? There's very light refreshments at the back, but are there any quick questions or thoughts that people might have? Yeah, hi.
I have a comment. I was looking at the census of 1910 here in Lanesville, and of the area we call downtown, right? 90% of the people who are living in downtown Lanesville were speaking Finnish as their first language in 1910. So
yeah,
there is the question of when you started to transfer speaking in English and speaking in Finnish.
I think much of it was not so that would become a primary language. As I said kind of coarsely, if you've got a musical band and you want to get a gig somewhere, it's good to have someone who can speak English or Italian or French or whatever it might be. I think that was a calculated choice. Yes. Hi.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm still processing how unusual it was for them to get together and say, we want to be taught English.
Absolutely.
Because the story that I think we all think about with immigrants coming in is that it's a gradual assimilation and the kids always learn it first. So how unusual was that to have a group band together and say, teach us?
Oh, I think, well, first of all, I haven't found any other use around here. I think it's amazing that they go to Gloucester from Lanesville, and Gloucester hears the request. Because it wasn't the arm camp, but they didn't really hear it. But I also think they were resolved. And I think they went knowing that Gloucester, they had such a resolve to learning the English because they had brought such a resolve into the strike in 1899. I mean, they go back with those quarrymen from Rockport to Bayview, and they have an all-night meeting where they are unified. That had never happened before. That was a huge event. I think that follows. And at the same time, realizing by 1902, many Finns have simply left. The problem, Frank mentions 1910, the Finns in Lanesville having Finnish isn't going to be first choice. It's a great story about 1899 and the community behind them. By 1912, not only is the Granite Company bringing in guards with rifles, but the fact is this: Cape Ann turns against the Finns, and they turn against any strikers, because they say, "Wait a minute, I remember you. Last strike I gave you credit, and you didn't pay my grocery store, and you never got that back. Or you bought these goods in the store, and you never paid me. No credit across the board, nothing for you." So there's this economic turn, and it does get reflected back on not just the Finns, but all of the workers. Your strike is tough luck. You're not helping us at all. I mean, and it's all being told by the men in Boston who are just saying, we can't do this, we can't do that. Anything else? Yes, hi.
Have you taught any of this in any of the KPN schools? I think it should be taught.
Yeah, you know, yes. I mean, I know that, I think it's a step-by-step look. 5 years ago, I was announcing my book on granite, and it's still, because, you know, things happen, and more information comes into the picture. The Rockford school system just started a Cape Ann history class. Because of Sandy's videotaping this, I intend to make this available in many venues because it's a summary for me. I don't think I'm going to find much more detail around this. I'd be delighted for someone to show me the newspaper article and the year of, you know, when they do it, and when Wayne Hall says he wanted to be taught. What a moment. But you know what echoes too? What echoes with the students shaking their hands as they read is in reading with this building, that when they were putting on finished plays and the community center was first built, Walker Hancock was a kind of shake everybody's hands. I want to shake all of your hands. It's a different culture. It's like looking at this picture and realizing, well, wait a minute. You know, this is a very different thing than I'm looking at than what I might expect. So yes, I agree that it would be a great thing. Yeah.
Go back onto the language thing. It's really astounding to realize that in the 1920s and 30s,